and went in the room.
Yeah, a good pianist can pretty much get me out of any trouble I get in. That's a plain.
Yeah. That's on hurry along. Please, are we on? Please stand in body or spirit and join us in our opening song, number 188 in the Gray Hymnal, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. Be seated. And a good morning. Morning, a great summer morning here in Venice, Florida. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Venice, or as we like to say, because it's so much easier, UCOV. We're a welcoming congregation today. And speaking of welcoming, do we have any first-time or even second-time visitors that are brave enough to stand and tell us your name and where you're from? Well, welcome, Chris. Thank you for coming. My name is Dave Lyon. I'm a member of the congregation, and I prefer the pronouns he, him, and his. If you're new to Unitarian Universalism, we have no creed. We have no dogma. What we have are 7 principles, which, if you're ever curious, are on a nice little bookmark out at the welcome table. And I always like to refer to the first one, which says we covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of each and every person. Each and every person. We welcome whoever you are, whomever you choose to love, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome. Welcome to church today. Our financial guys, Dave and Ken, will take the collection now. A couple of announcements. Today will be the final service with the Reverend Dennis McCarty. And just to retrace a little bit, Dennis came to us in February of 2020 when our settled minister went on a sabbatical. And shortly after Dennis arrived, boom, COVID hit, we closed, and Dennis, and we thank him, was the one that got us into recorded services. I believe he recorded them on Thursday, and then we broadcast them on Sunday because the sanctuary was closed at that time. But it kept us in community and in service, and it created a memory for us, and we can't thank him enough. I can remember having meetings in Blaylock Park to try to plan what we were going to do, because this was new ground for all of us. And then Dennis's time left, and our settled minister came back, and then our settled minister retired at the end of January of this year. And who popped up in February? The Reverend Dennis McCarty. So today we'll finish his time, and I thank Dennis for being with us this time, the time before, and the time before that, because I think he's created many memories here in the history of UCOV. Thank you, Dennis. Next week, we will welcome the Reverend Susan Carlson, joining us from the great state of Georgia. She will be here for the month of July. She will be here on July the 3rd, will be her first service. On July the 2nd, on Saturday, there's a meet and greet here in the sanctuary with Reverend Carlson, and she'd like to meet as many people as we can. So if you can be here at 12:30 next Saturday, you could meet Reverend Carlson, and she'd like to get to know you, and I'll bet you'd like to get to know her. So it's 12:30 next Saturday, and she'll be here for a month, and then on August the 7th, we will welcome our interim minister, the Reverend Amy Shaw, and they will be with us for 2 years. So it's exciting times ahead. At this point, I'll turn the service over to Reverend McCarty. No, how about we have a prelude by Lisa first.
I've spent the last 3 weeks before today forgetting that the prelude comes after the welcome and announcements, and I always had to correct myself. This week I finally remembered, and Dave forgot. So I feel a lot better now. Imperfection are us. We gather to seek community even though none of us is perfect, because each of us needs the warmth, stimulation, affirmation of this company of religious seekers. We gather to seek what is true, even though the truth we find may not be the truth we seek. We gather to be tantalized and delighted, puzzled and reassured, challenged and amazed. We open ourselves to the light wherever it may shine, in reflection that, like the sun, the light of truth is always moving. We light this chalice, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. And I invite you, we have to do this one at least once before I leave. I invite you to stand as you're willing and able and join in singing hymn number 1064, Blue Boat Home. You may be seated. We have a responsive reading this morning from the book of Ecclesiastes, which means the preacher, by the way. Our gray hymnal says teacher. Should be more or less kind of sort of the same thing. So as always, I'll read the straight type, and I invite you to respond with the boldface type. Vanity of vanities, says the teacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north, round and round goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns.
All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. In the same way, a heart longs for that which, even in vain, will not fill the heart.
Wanting is a wearisome thing, more than one can express. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun.
Go and eat your bread with enjoyment, and drink your wine with a merry heart. For God has long ago set out and approved what we do.
Light is sweet, and it is pleasant for the eyes to look upon the sunlight. Even those who live for many years should rejoice in them, for the struggle of life is itself the gift. And our choral response this morning will take a little different page and do number 123, Spirit of Life. And we have kids here this morning. How great is that? And if the kids want to come up, we'll talk a little bit. And I've wanted to do this particular little exercise ever since I first came down here, way back in 2020. Good morning, guys. Oh, I better put on my thing, hadn't I? Don't want to be spreading anything I shouldn't be spreading. You have to be smarter than the mask. Right? Okay. Anyway, I've wanted to do this one, and I need some assistance to do it, which is why I've waited till you were here. And, you know, COVID hit in 2020, and then I can't remember, other stuff happened the last time I was down here, and then I got COVID 3 weeks ago, and I'm better now. So I don't think I've had a chance to do this one. If I have done it, it's a summer rerun, but I don't think I've done it. So I have been asked at different times over the years, because I'm an atheist, if you're an atheist, how can you have reverence? What can you worship? What matters to you if you don't believe in God? Well, here's one little sample. I have the whole solar system in this box. We're going to make a model of the solar system. Just suppose this light bulb is the sun.
School projects look better than this.
Pardon?
School projects look better than this.
Hey, what you see is what you get, baby. I'm doing the best I can here. Leave me alone. Okay. Suppose this light bulb is the sun. Yes, I could have a better light bulb, but I'm trying to be. I'm using the stuff I've got. Well, no, we're making it small because the solar system is really big. But just imagine, use your imagination here, that this light bulb is 1 million miles across, because that's how big the sun is. About 1 million miles across, okay? So if this is the sun, do I have a volunteer to be the closest planet? Mercury. Let's see, I have to find Mercury here. Oh, let's do Mercury. Here's bright, shiny, hot little Mercury. Although if this light bulb is the sun, really, this is too big to be Mercury. Okay, Mercury would be about the size of the point of that pin. Okay, a lot smaller. But do I have a volunteer to be Mercury? It's easy. Okay, yeah, just grab this pin, and I have a tape measure, and if this sun is 1 million miles across, if this light bulb is 1 million miles across, then Mercury, stand up and take the end of this tape measure. Mercury's about 9 feet away. No, stand up, you got to go down the aisle there. Yeah, hold on, take the tape measure. Okay, there you go. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Hang on, slow down a bit. Can't read that fast. Oop, a little bit more. Okay, so Mercury'd be right there. Now you stand there and be Mercury. Okay, let's see, next planet is Venus. Here's a white pin, because Venus is all cloudy, right? Who wants to be Venus? Okay, so walk out by Mercury there and take the end of the tape measure. Take the end of the tape measure. Yeah, just hand it over. There you go. Okay. And so walk on out. Keep going, keep going, keep going. You're getting pretty close. Hang on, slow down a little. Nope, a little bit farther, a few feet farther. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Oh, dear. Oh, there you go, right there. Okay. So if this is the sun, 1 million miles across, Mercury's there, Venus is way out there. Okay. And I guess you're stuck with being Earth if you're game for it. Okay, there's Earth, green boat home. Okay, so you take the end of the tape measure and go on out there. Keep going right toward the door. Okay, hang on for a second. We're getting pretty close. A couple more feet. Earth. Whoop. There you go. Earth is right there. Okay, so here's the sun. There's Mercury, there's Venus, there's the Earth. And if somebody wanted to be Mars, they would actually have to go through that door, out onto the lanai, and they'd be standing somewhere around the back wall of the lanai. Okay, and then Jupiter would be a lot farther. You know, there's that little circle drive. Well, there's a tree in that circle. That'd be about where Jupiter is. Pardon? Yeah, you can let go now. You're doing a good job just standing there. Yeah, you're just fine. And then Saturn would be over where the school is, and Neptune and Pluto way beyond that. Can anybody guess where the nearest star would be? Okay, if the sun were the size of this light bulb, you would have to drive and drive and drive and drive, and the nearest star would be about the same size, about the size of this light bulb, called Alpha Centauri. There's actually one that's a little brighter or a little closer called Proxima Centauri, but it's so dim we can't see it. So the nearest star you could see, about the size of this light bulb, would be in New York City. Now, can you imagine a light bright enough this size that you can see it from New York City? Okay, so to me, that demands some reverence, baby. That demands some awe. So that's what we're talking about. That's our solar system this morning. Would you like to bring the planets back? Thank you, thank you. Okay, we're reeling in the solar system. You guys did a good job. Thank you. Thank you so much. And now we're going to sing. Hey, this is the time in our service when we mark the trials and triumphs, the high points and thin points of our lives. So if you have a celebration or sorrow to share, raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you. Yeah, we're still live.
Hi, I just wanted to celebrate Peter Mayer, who we just sang in Blue Boat Home. I communicate with him only through Facebook. I first met him at a GA in Tennessee. Delightful person, and if you love his music, he has a lot of things on YouTube, and he does performances. And if you go to his webpage, I think he's doing one this Saturday, coming Saturday. I know I recommended it once before, and somebody actually watched it and then thanked me for it. But he's a Unitarian, and he's a wonderful musician.
This is the week that Brad and I celebrate our 59th wedding anniversary.
I've been told you kind of get it figured out after the first 50 years. Is that accurate? I'd have to live to be about 120. Well, okay. Oh.
I just had 3 days of visits from family kids, and I just feel exhausted, but so happy.
Hey, I'm just standing here wondering, do we have a story about a minister who every morning would tell everybody to turn their iPhones and cell phones and things off. And she's right in the middle of her sermon. And she's now in Oregon, by the way. I mean, this is a real person. She tells this story. She was right in the middle of her sermon, and an iPhone went off really close. And she, oh, man, and it keeps ringing and keeps ringing. And then she realizes it's in her purse in the pulpit. So let us not judge, gang. It can happen to anybody. Well, so go the high points and thin points of our lives. Of course, the profit and cost of life is that we feel it. I know there's always more going on sometimes than gets mentioned. So thoughts and blessings out to all who have stuff going on. We lift up those who are traveling, who are recovering from illness or surgery, and hold within our hearts all who suffer or grieve. We pray each in our own way into the silence. The hopes of this community are offered forth in the names of all who have gone before, in the names of all who will come after, in the names of all the helpers of humankind. Shalom, shalom, salam, blessed be, and amen. Our reading this morning is from an online magazine article on BBC.com, Forgotten Woes of Lebanon's Slum Families. Refugees in Lebanon have always occupied the lowest level of the Lebanese social pyramid, often denied access to public services and not even being legally recognized as refugees. From the refugee perspective, citizenship, however produced within a wavering and corrupted state system, seems to be the only tool to guarantee even basic services. Generations of strife and warfare across the Levant are reflected in the population of Beirut's slums. Generation on generation of undocumented poor without citizenship status and virtually without hope. Majed Bernard, the de facto mayor of Beirut's High Al-Tanak slum, is leading the fight to save its residents' homes. High Al-Tanak, which means the tin quarter, is set for demolition. Lebanon has recently seen a luxury real estate boom and a sharp rise in land prices. Visiting journalists wax lyrical about five-star hotels and glitzy rooftop bars rising out of the ashes of war. Land values rising across Lebanon, so there's an incentive to get rid of people. When they did it in Chicago, it was called urban removal. If a large-scale development project wants to come along and you're poor, you're going to get pushed out. If you look at other third world countries, governments have come through and decided to accept and improve informal settlements, but that never happens here. There's no political will because of instability, where there are always more important problems that have to be solved. The flimsy cinder block houses flood every time it rains, and they have no running water or drainage. Seen from the air, one marker of Beirut's slums are the vinyl sheets unrolled to seal leaky roofs held down by old tires. Raw sewage soaks into the ground around their homes. Disease is rife. High Al-Tanak's residents would like the government to build social housing nearby, which they could move into and pay off gradually, allowing the community to stay together. But given the often glacial pace of political change in Lebanon, that is unlikely to happen anytime soon. Instead of social housing, they want to build parks and gardens in the better part of the city, says Mr. Bernard, holding the letter that tells him and his family they have to leave. They value animals more than they value the people. Our sermon this morning is the fourth in a series on motion pictures. This motion picture I'm talking about today is Capernaum. And if you haven't yet seen it and are interested after I'm done, I don't think I'm telling tales out of school here. Talk to Richard Canarelli, because he's got a copy and I think he wouldn't mind sharing it again. Quite a fascinating movie if you haven't seen it. In 1969, two Argentine filmmakers, Fernando Solanas and Octavio Gaetino, wrote a revolutionary treatise titled Toward a Third Cinema, Notes and Experiences for the Development of a Cinema of Liberation in the Third World. They rejected what they called first cinema, Hollywood-style production focused on entertainment and profit, and also second cinema, art films, as self-indulgent reflections of the director's ego. They proposed instead a third cinema, revolutionary at its heart, which would attack capitalism, neo-colonialism, and oppression. Using low-budget, spontaneous film techniques, a movie becomes a weapon against injustice and poverty. Now, outside university film studies departments, third cinema was largely ignored in the United States and also Europe, lands of what Solanas and Gaetino called first and second cinemas. But in South America, Africa, and Asia particularly, it has remained highly influential. And for all its sophisticated technique, Lebanese director Nadine Labaki's award-winning film Capernaum is the embodiment of 21st century third cinema. Labaki explains that she first got the idea for Capernaum when she saw a homeless mother and child camped for the night on the traffic island in the middle of a Beirut boulevard. They apparently had no other place to sleep. And she asks, why do we as a society allow this sort of injustice to happen? The migrant worker situation in Lebanon, the absurdity of the notion of frontiers, the absurdity that you need a paper, a passport or a birth certificate, to prove that you exist. Close quote. She and her husband mortgaged their house to raise money and then began to interview people in slums and prisons and courtrooms. Rather than professional actors and studio production, they recruited people who actually lived in the slums, who were more like the characters in the story. She would describe a situation and tell the performers to just respond the way they would in real life to that situation, using their own words and gestures, doing what felt natural to them. If the scene went counter to her expectations, the writers would modify the script, working that into the story. And there's actually a long and rich tradition of this kind of ultra-naturalist movie making in the Middle East. But Labaki took it to new highs. They used handheld cameras and filmed in the mean streets themselves, using the noisy street ambient sound rather than a controlled soundstage. And even when they used studio cameras for some sequences, they still mimicked the jerky images of a camcorder. The movie looks like an amateur YouTube video, but that's intentional, and it's crucial to the gritty realism. They shot endless variations of each scene, going through it time and again till they had more than 500 hours of video. And they then painstakingly edited all that down to the movie's 2-hour running time. Now, you'd expect that much editing with a nature documentary, but not with a drama. But it is in keeping with the third cinema ideal. Really, Capernaum could only have been done digitally. That much film would have been prohibitively expensive back in the days of celluloid when it all had to be processed. Video editors of that movie, their names are Constantine Bach and Laurie Gardet, and they deserve at least as much credit as the actors, director, and camera people for the movie's power. And I can't help comparing Capernaum with actually one of my favorites and Hollywood's most successful director, Steven Spielberg, whom film scholar Mark Cousins calls, quote, the most romantic director in the history of film. Now, I like Steven Spielberg. His heart is almost always in the right place, but as a first cinema Hollywood romantic, he is unable to be revolutionary even when he wants to. There's no such thing as romantic poverty or romantic oppression. Take a key scene, and I really like this movie, but Spielberg's 1985 movie version of Alice Walker's The Color Purple. Celi's sister Nettie lives with Celi and her abusive husband until he throws Nettie out for turning down his sexual advances. It's one of the most important scenes in the movie. To smoothly capture the flow of the action, Spielberg used an expensive piece of equipment called a Steadicam. Now, the way it works is the cameraman wears a special harness, which in turn supports a smoothly pivoting arm with the camera at one end and a counterweight at the other. And as the cameraman moves, the camera kind of glides along. And this creates an image that almost seems to float. So that's interspersed with close-ups to show the grief on the women's faces. The Steadicam follows the actors from the front porch of the house across the garden to the fence and the street beyond the garden, and children run along following the conflict. Everything flows in one smooth, continuous motion. And the effect really is lovely and quite impressive to watch. But it also looks just like what it is, a perfectly choreographed and rehearsed scene in a movie. And I remember thinking at the time, watching it for the first time, this scene is gorgeous. Why am I not feeling anything? But I could never forget. I was watching actors and choreography and camera angles and listening to movie music. Now, a similar scene lies right at the center of Capernaum. 12-year-old Zane is very close to his younger sister, Sahar, and then their abusive parents sell her to the grocer's son. And that scene, as her father takes her away, is chaotic. The camera bounces around, faces jerk in and out of the frame. You only see Zane's distraught face a couple of times for a couple of seconds. But the chaos on the screen reflects the chaos in the characters' lives, and the effect really is powerful. It's also a perfect example of naturalistic third cinema technique versus often romantic first cinema technique. Nadine Labaki tells us that the title Capernaum comes from the French term for chaos, but she does occasionally hint that it goes deeper than that. And she grew up Eastern Rite Catholic with a Catholic education in Lebanon and then in France, and she had to know what the Gospels say about the village of Capernaum in the New Testament. Jesus of Nazareth spent a lot of time there teaching and performing miracles. Several of his disciples came from Capernaum. In other words, the citizens of Capernaum had direct experience of Jesus as the miracle-working Son of God, but they rejected him anyway. So in the Gospels, he condemns them. In other words, Capernaum in the Bible refers to people who ought to know better, but who allow evil to happen anyway. Like, say, the wealthy nations of Europe and North America who do have the resources to feed the poor, clothe the homeless, and welcome refugees, but who refuse to do so out of our own greed and heedlessness. Worldwide, 385 million children live in the kind of poverty this film depicts. Labaki herself says it could happen in many of the world's leading cities. Again, that's a very third cinema statement, and it should make us stop and think. At the beginning, we learned that Zain al-Hajj is his name, Zain the Pilgrim, if you're paying close attention. He's serving a 5-year prison sentence for, as he puts it, stabbing a son of a bitch. In a series of flashbacks, we learn that the parents have no sense of parental love, no capacity for concern, as Labaki puts it. Undocumented refugees have been trapped in Beirut slums for so many generations. Such feelings of intimate affection and responsibility have drained away from many of them. So it's representing a real situation. Zain's father mostly sleeps. His mother is a petty drug dealer. Their poverty and misery are really not their own fault, but they also dehumanize their children. And they only have children because they don't practice birth control. And the kids take care of themselves, the oldest caring for the youngest. The older children sell odds and ends in the street for what little they can bring in or work for the grocer downstairs in return for their free, though squalid, apartment. And we only know Zain is 12 years old because that's the prison doctor's best guess of his age at the beginning of the movie. And he ran away from home because, as I referenced earlier, as soon as his younger sister got her first period, his parents sold her to the grocer's son for 2 chickens. They didn't even care enough to ask for what she was worth. And Zain eventually learns that the grocer's son got his sister pregnant. She was too small to carry the pregnancy to term. She started bleeding, but the hospital would not accept her because she didn't have papers. So she bled to death on the hospital steps. And that's when the grief-stricken Zain grabs a knife and runs and stabs the grocer's son. That's what he's in prison for. As the movie begins, that's all happened. Zain has already been sentenced to 5 years in prison. That's not why he's in court at the beginning of the movie. Rather, as something of a literary device called a deceit. We learn that right up front that he's suing his parents because, quote, quote, you had me, because they gave birth to him. That is, his parents are not responsible enough to have children. They won't take care of them, but they keep having kids anyway. So he believes his parents should be stopped from having any more children. And to go back and get technical for a second, this plot device, a child in a third world prison having a lawyer and suing his parents, is called a deceit because it's something that would not happen in real life. That's actually a kind of metaphor. The metaphysical deceit is one of my favorites, but we don't have time. The point is, the whole movie lifts up how problematic it is for parents or a society to produce children they have no intention of caring for. I can only talk about this in light of, and I'm just going to say it, this is what I feel and think, 2 totally irresponsible decisions handed down in the past week by our overly politicized Supreme Court. Last Friday, of course, they overturned women's constitutional right to choose whether to carry a problem pregnancy to term, and through fuzzy writing, they also called into question the right of privacy on which that right was based. Now, only the coming months and years will show us how that will affect other decisions based on a citizen's right to privacy. The right to contraception, the right to interracial marriage, the right to same-sex marriage. Ironically, maybe it wasn't ironic, I don't know. Just a couple of days before that, that same court struck down a New York state law regulating concealed firearms. So, while a woman's right to make the most personal decision of her life has been struck down, state attempts to regulate lethal weapons in the shadow of repeated mass shootings in elementary schools and elsewhere, that has also been struck down. And the upshot is clear. This court considers the state justified in forcing women to bear children, but it has no interest in protecting those children once they're actually born. And I can't think, yeah, I'm pissed, sorry. I can't think of a better illustration of Nadine Labaki's Capernaum metaphor, a society that ought to know better, but just doesn't really care. Mind you, it's not just the Supreme Court. They're just the symptom. It's the whole culture. Okay, Dennis, easy. Going back to the movie, Capernaum, Zane does inspire us by being a better parent than his own mother and father, and also a better parent than a lot of American legislators and jurists, apparently. After his sister is sent away, he runs away from home and meets Raheel, a black woman working on a forged work permit. As a single mother, she needs someone to watch her year-old baby, Jonas, so she takes Zane in and feeds him. And we get a reminder of how uncaring Zane's parents are when Raheel brings home a partly eaten leftover birthday cake to celebrate Jonas's first birthday. Zane's parents haven't even kept track of what year he was born, let alone what day. But Raheel's forged work permit is about to expire, but the forger demands a sky-high price for a new one, more than she can afford, because more than her money, he wants her son, Jonas, to sell on the human trafficking market. Raheel's forged permit does expire. She loses her job. First she sells her hair, then she prostitutes herself, but that gets her arrested. Zane doesn't know what happened to her. She just doesn't come home one night. But unlike his parents, Zane is kind to Jonas and refuses to desert him. He drums up what income he can, hustling on the street with Jonas in tow. Zane steals a skateboard and makes a little carriage out of it. You bright kid. And all that makes the movie sound like a wrenching portrait of poverty and misery, which in one way it is, but more than that, it really is also, like the skateboard, an inspiring portrait of human resilience. It's a lesson for our time and place on multiple levels. Zane and Raheel embody pluck and ingenuity, not to mention real human caring in the midst of desolation, even when things are worse. Zane is too busy coming up with solutions to feel sorry for himself. Even in jail, he manages to call up a television news program and get publicity for his plight and Raheel's. He gets the trafficker arrested and Raheel's baby restored to her. As Jesus of Nazareth is quoted in the Gospels, and as Nadine Labaki suggests as well, the poor have always been with us. As Labaki also said in interviews, this story is not just about Beirut, Lebanon. For example, many years ago, studying for ministry in Chicago, some of us did a study of Chicago's day labor market. Many firms that used unskilled labor, manufacturing, processing, agricultural companies, preferred to hire undocumented immigrants. The companies could pay them below scale or even withhold pay, which is what Raheel's boss does to her in the movie. And the companies don't have to worry about OSHA regulations or unsafe working conditions because workers without visas can't quit and don't dare complain. And that didn't just affect undocumented immigrants, but it also dragged down pay and benefits for unskilled labor all the way up the line. And it was the same way when I interned in southern Michigan. Unethical employers would provide transportation for undocumented farm labor to northern tier states because of the savings from low wages and unsafe working conditions. We have this kind of misery and injustice in the world because someone is making money off of it. Same as in Capernaum. Same as the firearms industry and all the lawmakers, firearms manufacturers have bought in the United States. Same as politicians, pundits, and frankly, churches who fundraise on the moral necessity of a child born, but not a child fed or protected from sexual or lethal physical violence. The difference between a good dramatist and a great one is that a good dramatist is good at telling you how they feel about something. The great dramatists, the Bertolt Brechts, William Shakespeare's, and maybe even a little bit Nadine Labaki, help you understand how you feel about something. So we shouldn't be surprised that we can learn about our own society from Capernaum, not just life in the Middle East. We can learn a lot from third cinema in general. One note, just for example, of something we can learn about our own lives is the subtle way Zane's parents are drawn in this movie. For all their selfishness and dysfunction, they do suffer real grief when their daughter dies. Society has been cruel to them. We're doormats, as the father complains. And they both say quite eloquently that people who live more privileged lives should not judge them. And watching Zane's parents, I do feel compassion for them. I think it's a natural thing to do. But at the same time, the movie makes clear that their manipulation, dysfunction, and petty crimes are real. They do harm people intentionally. Zane's mother swears to Allah they're not selling their daughter right before the father hauls the girl down the stairs, kicking and screaming to deliver her to the grocer's son, which of course gets her killed. And the lesson here, I think, is that it is good and natural to feel compassion for anyone. Let us love and care for all of humanity, even the most hateful. But compassion does not mean we believe everything a dysfunctional person tells us, or that we allow a harmful person to continue harming someone if it's in our power to make it stop, or that we're allowed to passively ignore the injustices society hands out. It's too easy to simply judge or look down our noses at a person or a culture. Okay, it's too easy to walk away from Capernaum thinking, wow, Beirut's a horrible place. I'm sure glad I don't live there. Because if that's our only reaction, we've missed the point. Nadine Labaki tells us she made a movie about all the world's invisible people. On the one hand, they're only invisible because people don't want to look at their misery. And on the other, precisely because there is such misery in the world, wherever we look, conscience demands energy for compassion and justice wherever we look. The point for us then is to ponder what our resources and commitment are, and to what degree we're willing to be made uncomfortable, and to act on that discomfort. Nadine Labaki refers to herself as a movie-making activist. And activists act because there's something they care deeply about. The question you and I have to answer, really every day, is what do we care about strongly enough to act? Blessed be, and amen. If you can't find the microphone switch, it's a bad sign. I wanted to leave you with a song. Clear back when I was a teenager, I really liked, my favorite hymn was How Great Thou Art, which of course Billy Graham featured it, and my grandmother would watch him. And I think we're in the ballpark there. And of course, as I got older, I would occasionally sing it. And, you know, it's just like the old thing that Unitarian Universalists don't sing well because they're always reading ahead to see if they agreed with the words. And as I would sing along more and more, I had to kind of translate. And then I found out the arrangement, the famous arrangement for How Great Thou Art, is copyrighted. And the words, of course, are copyrighted, but the melody is not copyrighted. It's a traditional Scandinavian melody. And I thought, wow, how cool is that? So, this song is called This Force of Life, and it's a version of, well, it's its own song, very much its own song, for atheists and humanists and religious liberals of all stripes. So, but it is the old melody. So if you're familiar with that song, sing lustily. I believe in lusty singing. So here we go, This Force of Life. Observe the world with spirit permeated, or contemplate the heartbeat steady pace. To so reflect, one can but feel elated by all that lives and moves and has a place. This universe compels us all to sing, to celebrate this force of life, the miracle, the stream of living things. We live in awe, this force of life, from spreading plain to frozen mountain fastness, the breathless awe of deep reflective mood. From windy heights unto the ocean's vastness, more quickening than can be understood. This universe compels us all to sing, to celebrate this force of life, the miracle, the stream of living things. We live in awe, this force of life, this web of life, in one vast congregation, so teems with creatures, greatest down to small. The wonder lies beyond imagination or easy words in witnessing it all. This universe compels us all to sing, to celebrate this force of life, the miracle, the stream of living things. We live in awe, this force of life. Thank you. The chalice is extinguished. Let it be our choice to go through this life in love and rejoicing and commitment to making the world the best we can. Let us do this not because we are so very powerful, but precisely because we are finite and human, and that is our choice before our human finitude and the struggles of the beings around us. Let fulfillment lie not in comfort or ascendancy over our neighbors, but in the depth and honesty of one another's gaze and the working togetherness of one another's hearts. As we go from this place, may the glow of love and enlightenment guide our way, and may the rhythm of our footsteps soothe and bless the earth so long as we walk upon it. Blessed be, and amen.
Thank you.